Kolarele Shunaike. I will start bang on at 1 o'clock. I always come on just a minute earlier, just so you kind of find it in your feeds, and it gives the LinkedIn algorithm a little chance to work. But if you are here already, or you're starting to see this stream, I'm going to put my chat on so I can see, but just let me know that you can see me. Put a little chat in, say hello, say something so I know that you're there. I'm going to assume that my LinkedIn is working well. So we'll give it another minute or so before I really kick off. But thank you guys for joining me. Thank you also for the great feedback, actually, on my last LinkedIn Live, which was my first one. So I started this last week, and I'm committing to doing this every week at this time, to kind of just give people a chance to see. So Les says hi. Hey Les, how you doing? Thank you for confirming that I'm there, making sure that everyone can hear me and that my microphone is sounding good. Okay, so I'm going to assume that people can hear me, which is good. So I'm going to kick off. So what I wanted to do with these LinkedIn Lives, these lunchtime LinkedIns, is to tackle each week a different communication skills challenge that people, especially my clients, typically have when it comes to their communication skills. So that is everything from presentations to negotiations to storytelling to persuasion, to all sorts of things, all related to communication. Hope is there. Hey, Hope, thanks for coming, checking in. Great to see you here. So that's what I'm going to be doing, is really tackling all different aspects of communication skills, with the aim that just through these little snippets, you will get a sense of what you can do right now, what you can start doing today to improve and transform your communication skills. Because as I always really emphasize, and you'll hear me say this a lot, there is a limit to how far you can get in your career just by being good at what you do. There is a natural ceiling that you will get to, which can be great, right? It can be great that you will get to just because you're good at what you do. But what you'll find is that above that, you'll find there's almost like a glass ceiling where you can see that you should and can go higher, but for some reason, you're just locked out and you're not quite sure why. Typically, that will be because your communication skills haven't established you as a leader or somebody to be respected and listened to in order to help you break through that glass ceiling. So I'm going to be covering this every week. And if you have a specific challenge or communication skills issue that you need some help with, or you need some perspective on, or you would like me to tackle in these LinkedIn lunchtime lives, then just send me a message. You can drop it in the chat and I will kind of make a note of all these different things. And I'm going to just try and cover them each time. So this week, what I want to really focus on is a common concern that people have. They don't necessarily always articulate it, although many of my clients do. And it's basically this. It goes like this. I know that I need to improve my communication skills, but where do I start? Right? I know I need to improve my skills, but where do I start? And that's a really important question that very often people won't even recognize that they need to know that, because one of the challenges with communication skills is there's a lot to think about, right? There's, what do I do with my hands and my eye contact? And should I be using storytelling? And how do I negotiate effectively? And what's the best method of persuasion? And how do I increase my level of charisma, right? There's all sorts of things that we have to be thinking about when it comes to our communication skills. And especially in this virtual world, you have the added dimension and the added challenge of, how do I connect with people whilst we're virtual and whilst all I can see is a camera and a screen, rather than being in physical presence where you can see more body language and nuance and all of that. So the question of, where do I start with my communication skills if I really do want to improve them, is a very real problem. And the reason it's a problem is that it can make it very difficult to do anything about it because you're just not sure where to start. And the impact that that then has is that you don't take the steps to improve your communication skills. And you start to lose out and have the real career impact that I talked about earlier, where you're not taking opportunities that you know that you're good enough to take. I was coaching a client just yesterday, in fact, who actually said exactly this to me, which is, because my skills aren't what they should be, I am actually turning down opportunities that I should really take. And that's very, very serious. So you start to think that, no, you know what, I'm going to let other people take the opportunity because I don't want to be the one in front of the camera or in front of an audience. Or it starts to affect your confidence in speaking up in meetings because you're really concerned about, oh, everyone's going to be judging me and people aren't going to like what I have to say. So the question of what do I do to improve my communication skills, where should I start, is a very, very real one, and one to really consider. And I know that it can therefore be very daunting and paralyzing. And in a way, you can start to shut down and think, well, you know, what's the point of doing anything about it? Why should I take any steps at all? And that will then lead you to want to perform and all sorts of things. So this is a very real problem. And I know that people often have it. I'm just going to turn this notifications off so I don't get disturbed. So the main thing I want to say, or the first thing I want to say, and it's kind of a little bit counterintuitive, because the instinct, I think, when you want to make that improvement is, okay, let me start studying the experts, right? Let me look at what Obama does, and Winston Churchill, and Michelle Obama, and Oprah, and, you know, Margaret Thatcher, if that was your particular kind of communication model, of people like that. And you start looking at those people and you think, well, okay, I'm not sure what to do, but I want to improve, so I'm going to go and study the greats, right? Natural instinct. So what I'm going to say is this: don't do that. Do not study the greats. This is going to be a little bit counterintuitive, but do bear with me. Don't study the greats. Don't look to someone like Michelle Obama, see what she's doing, and think, right, I'll just recreate that. Or, as I say, Winston Churchill, right? And there's a particular reason for that. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So one of the things that people often don't know, so someone like Winston Churchill, right, who we know him as a great orator, right? Put his politics aside in certain things, right? I know I've had that debate with many people. But in terms of him as an orator, him as a communicator, he was an outstanding communicator. So it'd be tempting to say, let me go and watch and see what he did and study that and try and recreate it. But here's the thing. Before World War II, when Winston Churchill gave all the speeches that we kind of really know him for now, do you know how many speeches he had given leading up to that point? 1,700 speeches. He'd given about 1,700 speeches before it got to World War II, when he gave all those speeches that we kind of know and that kind of are lionized in films and things like that. 1,700. Or if you take someone like Michelle Obama, when she first kind of started, or had her start as the first lady, she was so concerned about the impact of her early speeches that she got in a whole team of speech writers and professional coaches to help her work out how she should improve her public speaking. And then step by step, she started improving step by step every day until now she's just an awesome communicator. Or you take someone like Steve Jobs, who, when you think about Steve Jobs, you typically think about someone who's highly charismatic, who's very energetic, who gave great presentations, who was a visionary leader. Yes. But if you know the history and the biography of Steve Jobs, you'll know that it took him an awful long time to get to that point. In fact, he was kicked out of Apple, his own company, in the early days, where they basically said, no, this guy is just, he's too much of a tyrant. We don't like what he's doing. And they kicked him out of his own company. And he then effectively went into exile for years. In that period is when he learned his craft as a leader and learned his craft as a communicator. So that by the time he came back to Apple many years later, he was a much more effective communicator and a much more effective leader. So the point of all of that is, don't study the greats, because what you will do is see what they're doing and think, oh, I'll just do that. They may even make it look easy, and you start to fool yourself that becoming a great communicator is just quite an easy thing, and I just need to do a few little things and I'll be far, far better. Don't do that. There's a great phrase that I like, which I use, which is, don't compare your start to somebody else's middle or somebody else's end. Because if you do, what you'll do is you'll try and recreate what they do. You'll stumble and hit a block, and then you'll start feeling demoralized and think, I can't do this. This isn't a problem. This is a problem. Don't compare your start to their middle or their end. What you have to do is compare your start to their start. And what you'll realize is, nobody starts life as a great communicator. Everybody evolves, everybody grows, everybody gets better. And what I want to do now is to help you think about, what is it that you should be focusing on to help you get better? Because as I said at the beginning of this presentation, there are so many different things to consider and to think about, right? Body language, eye contact, the content of your message, your interaction with people, storytelling, negotiation. There's so many things to think about that it can be difficult to think, what should I do? Where should I focus on? So this is what I want you to think about instead, which is this. Don't look up, because when you look up thinking, oh, I'm so far away from where I want to be, it can be difficult to even bother starting. Instead, look down, right? Don't worry about, where should I be? Am I ever going to get to where I need to be? Are people seeing me as a great communicator already or not? Instead, look down and focus just on what I like to call the 1%. So the 1% idea is been used by many people. So even I think the Sky cycling team for years had never won any medals, never won a Tour de France, anything like that. And then they came to a realization that actually, rather than trying to make big leaps forward in kind of just a single, day or month or year, what they would do is focus on tiny, tiny incremental progress, right? So they would do things like improve the seats that riders would ride on, and they would get them to find out what pillows they slept best on and make sure that they only had those pillows, and they would travel with those pillows. They'd even look at the shower gel they used that would be the best for avoiding rash, and they would make sure they only used that shower gel. They focused on one tiny improvement after the other, one tiny improvement after the other, day by day, week by week, until eventually they had exponential growth. And in fact, if you kind of look at it mathematically, right, 1% improvement on something over a year, over 365 days, doesn't lead to a 100% improvement or even a 365% improvement. It leads to a 3,800% improvement just by 1% every single day, 1% every single day. So what I want to encourage you is to focus on that 1% improvement. Now let's think what that 1% improvement could be. So things like, for your next presentation, just practice one time more than you normally would. That's it, right? That is a 1% improvement. Practice one time more than you normally would, right? Or plan just an hour longer than you typically would plan. Just take that step and then make that your minimum benchmark for what you're going to do with your next presentation, with your next meeting, with your next interaction with whoever it's going to be. Or another 1% idea is listen, right? Listen deeper than you normally listen in conversations. So one of the real problems with conversation communication is that typically people don't listen to understand. They listen just to respond, right? So you just listen, waiting until you can say what it is you want to say. And then you respond and say it, thinking, yes, right, that person has now given me the gap in the conversation so I can say it. And as a result, your conversations tend to be surface level, where it's just a little bit of back and forth and not the kind of deep communication that people will appreciate. So in your next conversation, if you're looking for a 1% change that you can implement that will help you start to build your communication skills, listen just a little bit deeper than you normally do. Take your time to hear what the other person isn't saying, not just what they're saying, but what they really feel. What's the emotion behind the words that they are using, right? Or in your next negotiation, right? So plan 2 steps ahead instead of just one. So think, okay, if I'm going to come out with this proposition or this offer, and if I say it, the next person's going to say that. Think 1 step further ahead than you normally do, right? And that will mean that as you go into that negotiation, you'll be more confident with how you're going to communicate during that negotiation, right? Or another 1% idea is with emails. Now, emails is one of those things that we do every day, all the time. People receive hundreds of emails every day. With your next email, take that 1% step to edit it just a little better, to send it in a way that says, when the person receives this, they're going to be glad that they received my email. And it will just mean that the next time they get an email from you, they're going to be much more interested to hear it. So take that 1% step to edit your email just a little better. Or with another time you're going into the office or you're on an online conversation, take that step of interacting with someone and asking them something personal about themselves just to make a better connection with them. That's another 1% improvement that you can make that will change the way people perceive you as a communicator. And as you do that more and more and lead into that and start doing that in different areas, just 1% change, 1% improvement, 1% better than you were yesterday. And then the next day you do something 1% better than you were the day before that. What you'll find is that you'll start to see growth that starts to compound itself. Remember that 1% that every day for 365 days leads to 3,800% improvement. You start to see that kind of growth. And that is the kind of thing that then gives you the momentum and stops you worrying about how do other people do it and start thinking, actually, I'm getting better, I'm improving. And then you start to see the differences you can make with your storytelling. And this time you're going to do one story within your presentation where before you never used any, right? You see the difference that can make. So 1% improvement is what I want you to focus on. If you're in the chat, by the way, just put a little comment in there so I know that you've got that and that makes sense. Because very typically, it really is the thing that makes a difference in the change and the impact that you have with your communication skills and your willingness to actually do something about it. So now I'm going to check some questions. So I've actually had some messagings from people on here. So let me see what questions they have. So here's a question on PowerPoint. Yes. Okay. So PowerPoint and how can you improve PowerPoint in that 1% way? Yes. So here's a very, very simple way to improve. Oh, Jules, thanks for that. Makes sense. I'm glad it does. Here's a very, very simple way to improve a PowerPoint presentation on that 1% idea. Go through your slides, right? And strip out as much text as you can. Strip out as much text as you can. So very often with PowerPoints, we are tempted to put in bullet points of text and words and graphs and things like that, so that you end up with a slide that is just full of information. And then very typically you'll kind of turn to the screen, right, and start reading out what's on the screen. And in people's minds, they're kind of like, okay, to be honest, I can read anyway, so why are you doing that? And then because you've turned towards the screen, to the slide, to read what's on it, you're disengaging from your audience. Now, there are a lot of things that you can do, and I do a lot of training on this in terms of how to improve a PowerPoint so that it's much more effective and kind of connects with your audience better. But a simple 1% change you can start making today is to take out as much text as possible so that you focus on making it visual rather than kind of a written script. So I would say if you have a lot of information that you need to impart, do a handout and give people that. But with your PowerPoint, instead of having 50 words on a slide, get it down to 13, then get it down to 7, then get it down to 3 and use and supplement it with an image. So that's a 1% kind of change that you could easily make towards your PowerPoint presentations. So if you've got a question of like what kind of 1% change, do feel free to put it in the chat. I'm going to check another message that I've had here. Let's have a look. So asks, how can I deal with questions and answers? Yes. Okay. So one of the big, so Jules, I'll just come back to you, Jules. You say replacing text with pictures. Yes, as much as possible, replace your text with pictures or have one picture supplemented, one text rather, a few words supplemented by text. It's much more effective from a visual perspective. And it means people will get the point you want to make from the visuals of the slides, but they'll primarily pay attention to what you are saying about them. So there's a little 1% change that you can make. The next question I had was on about questions and answers. So Q&As and how can you make these better? Now, very interesting thing, and actually I'll probably do a whole LinkedIn Live on question and answer and how to deal with that. Because it's one that people often have in terms of, okay, I know what I'm doing, I give a presentation, but when it comes to the Q&A, that's when I really, really lose it. So a simple 1% change that you can make or improvement to how you handle Q&As and question and answers is this. And it's one of the things that I actually learned from my work as a barrister. So as a barrister, when you're cross-examining, the big rule of thumb is never ask a question to which you don't already know the answer. Never ask a question to which you don't already know the answer. The reason is if you do that, right, you ask a question, you don't really know what the answer is going to be. People will give you something that completely surprises you, and then you'll be thrown off your game, and then your cross-examination will start to kind of wander all over the place. So never ask a question to which you don't know the answer. Now, how does that translate in question and answer? The reason as a barrister I can go into cross-examination and never ask a question to which I don't already know the answer is because I take a huge amount of time to prepare and prepare and prepare my cross-examination, looking at all the information, looking at all the documents, looking at what this other person has said in emails and memos and whatever, so that I already know what it is that their response is going to be to any one thing that I ask. And that allows me to control the cross-examination much more effectively. Now, when it comes to questions and answers, the thing is this: 95% of the questions that you will be asked during a Q&A, right? Whether it's during a meeting, after a presentation you've given, at a keynote, whatever it is, even in an interview, in fact, 95% of the questions you will be asked in a keynote interview, any Q&A situation, are entirely predictable. Entirely predictable. Very, very few people actually ask questions that are completely left field and nobody could have predicted. That means that if you take the time before your next Q&A, before your next presentation, whatever situation it is, even an interview, and just take the time to work out what are all the different questions that I might be asked on this topic, and then prepare what your answers are going to be to those things. When it then comes to the Q&A and you're in the moment, you will be, let's say you're asked 10 questions, 9 of them, you will know exactly what the answer is because you've done the preparation. And that will give you such confidence that even the one question that you ask that you don't know the answer to won't be a problem at all, because you'll kind of have the confidence to be able to deal with it effectively. And I said, I think I'll do a whole LinkedIn Live on dealing with Q&As, because it's one that people often ask me. So that's a simple 1% improvement you can make to Q&As and how to deal with them. Just prepare more than you have before. Take a moment to say, right, I've done my presentation, I've done the meeting, I've prepared for what I want to say. What are the questions that I might be asked? And then prepare your answers, and then you're good. Got some points here. Let's say agreed, Repowerpoint, talk around the subject, agreed, less words, absolutely. Sometimes can be difficult to remember everything you want to say. Is that just practice, practice, practice? Yes, so a couple of things there, Les. Practice, definitely, yes. One of the things that I also say, and this is, again, is another 1% improvement, is people often think that, oh, because I'm worried about forgetting what I want to say, I'm going to try and memorize everything. Now, the problem with that is the minute something happens that's slightly different to what you expected, everything goes out of your head and your kind of head is swimming and you get blank brain syndrome, as I like to call it. So my recommendation is don't try and memorize anything. What you want to do is internalize the message. So that means know your subject so deeply that you could speak about it for hours on any one part of it. And then that way, you're not worried about what particular words you're going to use. You just know that you know the message that you want to share. And there are 100 different ways you could share it with different words. So internalize, don't memorize. And then actually you'll be far more effective in dealing with PowerPoint questions and things like that. I hope that helps, Les. So we've got a few more comments here. LinkedIn user, I don't know why it doesn't give names, but says PPP are great for key points only. I assume PPP means practice, practice, practice. So yes, I'll agree with you. Practice or preparation is key. Sophie, hello, Sophie. How are you doing it? Okay, so you want a session on Q&As. Yes, Sophie, I will do a question or a session on Q&As because, yes, that is one that a lot of people do ask me about. Les Taliban, great trick. Yes, Les, I'm glad that helps as well. So we're now coming to, what are we, 27, and I say I keep these to 30 minutes only so you guys can continue with your sandwiches, or I don't know what you know, what you're doing for lunchtime during lockdown, but whatever you're doing for lunchtime during lockdown. Listen, I'm going to keep doing this every week. If I get interrupted because I've got something else, I'll try and figure something out. So if you have a question that you would like me to tackle in any one week or the next week, do put it either in the chat or send me a message in different medium. If you're watching this now and you are not already connected to me, do connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to kind of connect people on there. And of course, if you want more help than we have been able to cover and that we will be able to cover in these kind of LinkedIn Lives, then just reach out to me. Go and check out my page, my website. I've got a great communication super skills program, as I call it. I'll just show you that quickly, which is here, in which I help people develop their communication super skills in kind of a 3-4-month program that people actually really love. So do have a look at that if you are interested. But otherwise, thank you guys for joining me this week. Let's have a look. Any other comments? LinkedIn user again says PowerPoint presentations. I assume that meant to cover PowerPoint presentations in one of these LinkedIn Lives. Yes, I certainly will, Mr. LinkedIn user. I don't know why it doesn't show your name, but unfortunately it doesn't. And I think that's all the comments on here. So, okay, cool. I'm just in time. I think 1 or 2 minutes left. So thank you guys for joining me again on Lunchtime LinkedIn Live with Kola. That's what I guess I'll call it. Or I think I've been calling it, how do I say that? I'll see you guys again next week. Remember, connect with me or send me some questions if you want me to tackle them again. All right, guys, thank you for making it pleasant again for me. I will see you again in the following week. Ciao. Oh, also more comments. Yes, thanks, guys. Really appreciate that. Bye.